Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. About 3 years ago, I did a video on Vladimir Putin and where he is found in Bible prophecy. I demonstrated that he is the last king of the north, as found in Daniel chapter number 11. And in verse number 40 of that chapter, he is described as defeating the last king of the south, who is our own Barack Obama. Now, since then, I have come across quite a few other incidences of Vladimir Putin in the media, which verify what I stated at that time, but which also raises a few doubts. And I want to go over those on this program, because I am only 95% sure that Putin is the last king of the north. He could be manipulated by others. Maybe he is just a puppet like Obama. Or he could be followed by another premier of Russia. Lately it has been said that Putin is not well, for example. If he were to die in the next, let's say several weeks or months, he might be succeeded by another last king of the north who fulfills Daniel chapter number 11, perhaps even better than Putin. We will soon find out, because when Russia attacks the United States, whoever is the leader of Russia at that time will be the last king of the north. Now, in that last video, I described 18 different aspects of the last king of the north. And since then, I have expanded that to include 28 different descriptions of this last king. And I thought we'd go through these one by one and then show a few clips of Putin recently, as he has been shown in the media. And let's take a look ourselves and see, does Putin fulfill the prophecy of Daniel in chapter number 11? So let's look at verse number 36. And the first thing Daniel says is, "And the king shall do according to his will." So let's first take a look at this clip of Putin addressing the Russian National Congress. This was about a year ago, just to get an idea of Putin's place in contemporary Russian history.
Гораздо важнее другое. Как мы все с вами работаем. Каких результатов мы добиваемся. И как к этому относятся граждане нашей страны.
So I think we can see that this first description of the last king of the north does indeed fit Vladimir Putin. There are very few aspects of Russian society which he does not control. For example, the military, industry, entertainment, the news media, and even the church all come under the thumb of Vladimir Putin. He definitely acts according to his own will. And now let's look at the second and third descriptions of this last king of the north, as found in Daniel chapter number 11. "And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god." Notice the word God here is in lowercase letters. That indicates that Putin is leader of all aspects of Russian society. Let's continue with this clip of Putin addressing the Russian National Congress and taking notice of the logo on his podium. Notice how very similar it is to Obama's logo.
В любом демократическом обществе на выборах. Что касается вопросов политико-технологического характера, кто и чем должен заниматься в будущем, то это вопросы второстепенного, как я сказал, значения. Хотя и они имеют определенный смысл и значение. И в этой части у нас тоже есть свои предложения. Однако...
And now let's look at Daniel's fourth description of this last king of the north. "And he shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods." Now notice here, God is capitalized. So this is the Lord God Almighty that Daniel is talking about. Does Putin respect the Lord, the King of the universe? Well, this is where things get a little dicey, because he does present himself, at least to the public, as a loyal member of the Russian Orthodox faith. Let's take a look at this clip where he very interestingly describes his baptism in a Moscow cathedral.
Когда вот они с соседкой меня принесли сюда крестить, отец у меня был членом КПСС, и причем таким последовательным и строгим человеком. Они это сделали как бы в тайне от него, ну, во всяком случае, считалось, что в тайне. Вот, когда принесли на крещение, то священник, который крестил, сказал, что вот сегодня день Архангела Михаила. И, кстати, говорит, и меня зовут тоже Михаилом. И если вы ребенку имя еще не дали, то могли бы назвать ее Михаилом. Но мама сказала, что вот мы уже зарегистрировали в честь отца Владимир. И тоже мама сказала, что он такой добрый был, мягкий. Батюшка говорит, ну и слава Богу, и хорошо, это наше старинное русское имя. Показал икону здесь в храме. Князя Владимира, святого князя Владимира. Говорит, это будет ваша икона.
And now let's look at Daniel's fifth description of this last king of the north. And he shall prosper till the wrath be accomplished, for that which is determined shall be done. Well, this is very interesting, because by prospering, does Putin live a high lifestyle in the former Soviet Union? And for this I want to read a little bit from an article that was in the Huffington Post. Now this is a complaint about Putin's lifestyle by one of the opposition leaders, so it might be a little exaggerated. And this is from August of this year. Russian President Vladimir Putin is spending billions of taxpayer rubles on 20 luxurious residences, 43 jets, and 4 yachts, a top opposition leader claimed Tuesday. All heads of state use government property and funds for presentation purposes, but Boris Nemtsov says Putin's lifestyle is far more lavish than his Western counterparts. In the report released Tuesday, Nemtsov, a former deputy prime minister, estimated that the maintenance of Putin's residences, jets, and cars alone costs $2.5 billion per year. Putin has been mistaking government property for his own for a long time, Nemtsov said. This is an insolent, cynical, and luxurious lifestyle at taxpayers' expense. Well, as I say, he may be exaggerating, but then again, this is an interesting indictment of Putin if true. But the most interesting part of Daniel's statement about the last king of the north is that he will survive until the wrath is accomplished. This means that after this last king of the north defeats Obama, who is the last king of the south, he will survive until the very end. In other words, until Armageddon. I believe that this means that Putin will be a strong supporter of the Antichrist. I don't believe he's the Antichrist himself. Remember, the Antichrist in Revelation has 3 different characteristics. He looks like a leopard. That means he is probably biracial, like Obama. He has the mouth of a lion. That probably means he speaks English, again like Obama, but also many other people. But he walks like a bear. Now this would leave Obama out of the Antichrist sweepstakes. Walking like a bear means he has the military support of Russia. The bear in prophecy refers to Russia, as we saw on that logo on Putin's podium. So it's very interesting that Daniel says that Putin will survive until the very end. He will be a loyal son of the Antichrist, and I believe he will be the last precursor of the Antichrist. And now let's look at Daniel's next description of this last king of the north. Number 6, neither shall he regard the gods of his fathers. Now again, the gods here is in lowercase letters. And I'm going to interpret this probably a little differently than most. I believe the gods of his forefathers refers to the great Russian culture of the 19th century. This is one thing which the Soviet Union has totally stomped out, and it has not recovered. And I'm thinking of the great musicians like Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff, or let's say the great authors like Leo Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. This part of Russian culture has not recovered. And it's interesting that as we look at these clips of Putin, you will see he never gets into the arts. And I'm not saying I know everything about his life. Maybe he does appreciate Russian culture. But we hardly ever hear of what was really the most impressive part of Russia before the Soviet Bolshevik Revolution. And now let's look at the next characteristic of this last king of the north. Number 7, nor does he follow the desire of women. Now, this is the KJV version. In the Douay-Rheims Catholic version, it says that he follows the lust of women. Now, this is one of the most difficult things to determine about Putin. Naturally, his private life is kept private. Certainly in the Russian media, there are rumors every now and then. And as I say, different Bible translations interpret this differently, that he either follows the lust of women or he does not. Now let's look at this next clip, because we'll see that, at least to the public, he presents himself as a family man. So I have to admit, from this clip, it does not look as if Putin is fulfilling the prophecy of the last king of the north. He appears very much a family man, and he also seems to support the Russian Orthodox faith. Now let's look at the next two descriptions of the last king of the north, as found in Daniel, verse number 37. Nor does he regard any god, and again, that's a lowercase g, for he shall magnify himself above all. And we've been seeing that Putin does fulfill that part of the prophecy. And now let's look at verse number 38. And we come to one of the most interesting descriptions of this last king of the north yet. But in his estate, now that means that in Putin's official capacity, he honors the god of forces. And that should be transliterated as Maoism, because it means the Muslims. So if Maoism means Muslim, as I suspect it does, then there is a conflict here. Because would a practicing Christian supply nuclear weapons to the Muslims? Putin's public persona is not the same as what he is doing behind the scenes. If he is going to do as what Jesus would do, does it make sense that he would have thousands of Russian technicians in Iran helping them build nuclear weapons? I don't think so. But there is no doubt Vladimir Putin is very popular in the Muslim community. Let's look at what Turkish novelist Adnan Akhtar says about Putin.
As far as I see, Putin is the most perfect leader that has come to Russia in the last 100 years. Actually, he's the greatest one in the general European community. He's really a very brave person, a very courageous person. He's on the side of the truth, and he's supporting true religion. He's supporting Islam, and he has...
Now in part 2 of this series, I want to take a continuing look at how Vladimir Putin does fulfill Daniel's prophecy of the last king of the north, and how his support of the Muslims overrides his public persona of being a faithful member of the Russian Orthodox faith. And as always, I do offer a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled. If any of you are interested, you can write to the address you see on your screen, or simply send me a message to my YouTube channel.